Okay, guys, thanks for joining us today. The objective of this intro session is just to give some nice deep background image behind mFluence and the relationship between Joule and TNS, and to give a quick overview of the system as well and the basic functions of the system and how to draw and begin understanding the insights within the TNS Connected Life data. So first of all, what we'll go through is just a quick overview of Connected Life. Many of you are very familiar with digital life, and so I just want to go through some of the key changes within the Connected Life data. So Connected Life was put to market between March and April, and we got our first sets of reporting out in June to July. That data was then fed into mFluence, where we've been able to visualize all of the data. Field work was carried out across 50 markets globally. It was only fielded to people who are regular internet users, aged between 16 to 65. And it goes right down to individual user respondent data, and it looks at purchase categories and various different types of behaviors across both above the line media, so print and radio and TV, as well as more digital focused stuff across desktop and mobile. Next slide just shows the markets that we're looking at. So we have very good coverage across North America, Latin America, Middle East and Africa, Asia Pacific, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And we've also got a number of product categories. These are based on past purchase of a product from one of these categories within the last 6 months. Move on to the study positioning. What it's really looking at is providing a huge amount of breadth and depth into understanding user behaviors. The key point of this is to enable key decision makers within your organization to understand the decision-making processes throughout and offline, and give a really, really good granular view on new opportunities and how you can actually then implement those. Pass over to Mark Anthony for this slide.
Thank you. So one of the key parts about the survey really is part of an algorithmic scoring, really, in all honesty, to kind of look at consumers and look at consumers in different ways. There's a unique segmentation that splits the audiences into 4 different quads, and it gives you the ability to really start to understand how behaviours change, how that affects their social behaviour, their digital behaviour, the media consumption, the device ownership. When you're kind of planning strategies, it gives you the ability to really do the comparison. As we walk through the tool, I'll take you through some of the elements inside there and talk about how it's used and why it's used in those ways. Back to you, Tim.
Okay. Some of the major points that we have through the TNS Connected Life data is really about uncovering opportunities. So this is looking how you can contextualize your adverts to be more relevant to your audience, and which are really the platforms of scale and reach within markets, and all of the key ways that consumers find really important to allow you to engage with them. So this is looking at everything from how to optimize your media mix based upon day parts for both devices and different media channels, looking at how to provide more effective contextual targeting, so looking at the types of messaging that people engage with, what are the bridges and barriers to consumers researching or purchasing with your brand within a specific category. We also look at how to reinforce messaging across multiple channels. So again, very key part around the inverse relationships between channels throughout the day. We look at a very consumer-centric approach to brand building. So this is understanding where consumers are and at which times they're happy to engage with brands. And also looking at brand activation, which covers very similar points to that, but just in a bit more detail. We also look at how to personalize content and tailor messaging to each segment. So as we look at the different segmentation and clustering within the data, you'll start to understand that there are very, very different behaviors within each of those segments, and those are represented throughout all of the systems. Okay, we're just going to jump between decks now. Overview of mFluence itself. Okay, Mark Anthony, if you could just give a quick introduction of the relationship between mFluence and 10th Avenue, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'm here today representing 10th Avenue, which is one of the holding groups inside WPP. 10th Avenue are the owner of Dual. What we do strategically is work with our holding companies, work with partners, or work with clients to create new opportunities, create products, create services, which mean that we don't just move our own companies forward, but we move WPP forward as a whole. So our strategic vision coming in line with working with CNS is giving them the ability and giving them something else they can kind of bring to the table and bring back inside the kind of the great work they do with their surveys. So it is a kind of typical case of horizontality and partnership. I lead the UK team for 10th Avenue, while Tim leads part of global planning for Dual. And together we've been able to kind of build out a product that can kind of service the planning community, as well as to give that agency access back into the data in CNS. Let's move on to the next one, please, Tim. So yes, mFluence in 2014, we basically replicated almost everything that CNS had inside their survey basis. But what we've done is add a kind of very unique way of kind of working with the data. From 55,000 panelists that were available, we've allowed every data point within the system to be matched with any other data point and filtered. You can call that data pivoting. It gives you the ability to build out great segments. We've given us over 24 billion data permutations across the 50 countries and our 55k panelists. The system itself is cloud-based and has secure access. They're only accessible by the user and their user login and password. It's compatible with all major browsers, so it's accessible from Firefox to Internet Explorer to Chrome. It works on all devices, so we always suggest you just from tablet upwards. You gain the most functionality from that way. But it is portable, it works on 3G and very low signal basis also. And it's also PC and Mac compatible, meaning it's accessible from anywhere by anyone. Simply, I guess the easiest way to describe what we've done and what we added in our partnership to bring this to life is that we've brought connected life to life. We've taken kind of linear kind of data sets and we've made them adaptable and made them non-linear, so you can really select and engage in any way that you like to. Every part of the tool is adaptable, so we've allowed all different elements to become, put you in the power of how you control the graph view, how you control filtering, how you control the things. And the reason why we've done this is the ability for you to ask your questions. We could have gone down a route and made a compartmentalized planning tool, actually giving you the ability to answer your questions in the way you want to, which is much more powerful. It's interactive, and we've allowed the ability to share sessions for anyone to come in from anywhere. If you're working with clients, you're working in big collaborations, you're working in planning parts of different agencies. It's a nice way to be able to share, so you don't just preach about the things that you know. You bring people into sessions to collaboratively work. And due to this, we've taken up agency access into WPP by giving a self-service tool that agencies could access.
Thank you, Mark. So just to give a quick overview of what's actually inside mFluence, we have 9 core sections within the system. I'll just run through these one by one for you quickly now. Country profiles gives a very good general overview of individual markets within the data. So there are 50 country profiles within the tool. These cover anything from economy through to cultural makeup. Anything esoteric that you need to understand about the cultural makeup of a market is in there, right through to employment, GDP, weather, and media landscape as well. So it gives planners a really great overview, general overview of each market to understand if there are any specifics you need to be aware of when formulating your campaign ideas. We then have segment clustering, which is a unique data visualization. It really connects consumer segments to the actions and behaviors and activities of consumers within those segments. And it works across multiple markets and multiple purchase categories and audience selections as well. The document library, this is one of our sections which is currently in dev at the moment. We can update you when we're expecting that to go live. What this will essentially contain is a number of pre-built documents or reports. For example, if you have any local market reports that have been executed by TNS, these will be stored in here. You're also able to go through, as you go through the system, and actually build your own reports and build your own graphing, which will be stored here for you to share around your organization or with your clients. Media consumption looks very much at how people are consuming media and what types of media they're consuming. It also looks at day parts and the types of activities users are undertaking on these media types across the day. Research and purchase. This is looking at bridges and barriers into research and purchase, so the kinds of things that will entice consumers to engage into researching your brand or purchasing one of your products. Future behaviors looks at next level technology or upcoming platforms. It looks at 2 points within this, so one, whether people have heard of these cutting edge platforms, and also whether they intend on using them or if they are already using them. Device infrastructure looks at the ownership of digital devices now and in the future. And digital activities looks at how users of those digital devices are, what they're actually using them for. Path to purchase is one of our deep analysis sections. So this helps you to understand very much so how consumers are engaging in the path to purchase and what the key driving behaviors are and which key driving channels are driving those behaviors. We look at that across 5 stages. These are very much aligned to the 5 stages that TNS use. So we look at discovery, planning, deciding, purchase and post-purchase to get a really full view of that whole process. And we also provide online and offline splits for both research and purchase, as well as looking at the number of touch points that are involved. Okay, what I'll do now is I'll just jump into the live demo. Okay, so what we're seeing now is the initial entry screen into the system. All users will be able to go straight into the system, see this home screen. We're also given a couple of options down on the right-hand corner where the mouse is. One of them is to skip this intro, or the other one is to navigate through it. And what happens when you navigate through it is you'll see that it will provide a series of quick how-tos. Which can actually give a very clear understanding of how to use the fundamentals of the system. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll just skip that intro, and we'll start going through some of the core areas of the system. So the first area that I'll show you is the filtering, and this is really where most people's journeys in mFluence will begin. So within the system we have 4 different filter areas. We have demographics, which is where we can assign our genders, our age bands or individual age years. The regions we're looking at, so for holistic regions for North America, Eastern Europe, those kinds of places. Looking at countries, so we can look at China, Czech Republic, UK and USA. I've pre-selected these. We can also look right down into some real detail by looking at city or province within all of those areas. There are 3 other areas within here. So we have socioeconomic. This will look very much at income levels, employment, household roles of individuals, and also education level. We then have products purchase. So this is where we're looking at our product groups. So we have 25 product groups, distinct product groups. and about 50 products, which are what make up the product groups. So, for example, if we were to select automotive, what that would then show is the individual products within that category that we can drill down into if we need to. Within segments, we have the 4 segments that are outlined by TNS. So these are looking at connectors, functionals, leaders, and observers. And these are all based upon high and low social usage and high and low digital usage. I'll just go back into demographics quickly. So as you can see, under countries, we've got 4 countries which have been highlighted. These are the selections that we're going to run through in the demo. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click lock on those selections for reasons that will become apparent as we go through. It's always key to lock your selections at this level in, because as we go throughout the system and throughout all of the other graphs, you're actually able to add additional filters on top of these. Of course, if you get to a point where you want to remove those filters, you want to ensure that you don't remove your overriding filters as well. So I've just clicked the lock symbol, and I'll make those selections now. Okay, the first area we're looking at is device infrastructure. I'll just open the navigation menu so we can see which areas are included within this. So it looks at digital device ownership, which is the screen we're on currently. We also have device intent to buy, mobile handset manufacturer, mobile operating system, screen size, tablet manufacturer, and computing form. We'll concentrate on device ownership currently. So what we're looking at the moment is the bar chart view, and this is an aggregated view for all of the countries that we're looking at. What we'll see down at the bottom is we have 3 different charting options and graph visualization. So as I said, we're in the bar chart currently. If we change to the line graph, that will readjust and repivot the data into a line graph. And what you can see now is we have multiple different options for dimensions along the bottom of that charting area. So we have anything from age through to country through to product group. What we're looking at currently in the charting area is age silos. So you can see the different levels of ownership of devices across different age bands. What we're going to look at is country. So this is going to create a comparable chart between devices across the 4 countries that we're looking at. What we can also do when we're in these charts is we can switch between the types of numbers that we're looking at. So we are currently looking at penetration levels so devices penetrated into the online users that have answered the survey. By clicking on the showing percent button here, we can actually change that and we can get a view for absolute numbers. How we've done this is we've taken the US Department of Commerce and data from the World Bank and used the population stats for each market and derived an absolute scale figure by working the penetration figures into those population figures. What this does is gives a really, really fundamentally useful way of understanding scale. So it can give great perspective to your planning when you're looking at different markets and trying to attain opportunity. So I'll just flick that back into penetration. We also have the ability to look at user respondent levels for each market as well, depending on the question spreads you're looking at. What we also enable within the system, we enable on-the-fly filters. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select a couple of different categories to look at. So I'm going to select smartphone and a mobile phone, not a smartphone. That then repivots the data so that we are looking at smartphone owners and instances where they also own a feature phone. And we'll swap back into the bar chart. So we're looking at a whole smartphone audience, so obviously that is on 100%, whilst smartphone owners who also own a non-smartphone are looking at about 14.3%. What I'll do is I'll just go through a couple of other key areas within this navigation section. So we can look at intent to buy. So now we are looking at people who own a smartphone. Many of them actually have a desire to repurchase a smartphone in the next 6 months, as you'd expect with contracts, but also the other types of devices they're looking at purchasing as well. Some of the key functionalities within these areas are, as you apply these additional filters, we have some extra filter controls at the bottom right-hand side. So again, we have a lock function, which will lock those on-the-fly filters in, or we have a remove filter function. So I'm just going to press that and remove those filters that we've just applied. And as you can see on the right-hand side, those filters have disappeared from the filter list, and we're left with just our overriding country filters that were applied. So I'll just skip through very quickly into the next section. So this section looks at digital activities. So these are the types of things people are doing on their devices, and looking very much at the time spent and frequency of usage. Okay, so within this section we have a very clear breakdown. So we're looking at the aggregated bar chart view again. We're looking at anything, all of the general activities that you might expect across all of the devices in the household, so whether that's reading news, sport or weather, right through to accessing social networks or using VoIP calls. What we'll see on the top right-hand side next to the key is that the chart is split into two categories, so those that do and those that do not do. What we can do is we can actually drill down into these categories to get an idea of a more granular makeup of those responses. So I've just clicked on do, and that has shown us now frequency statements around each of those uses. So we can see that read news, sports or weather, there are lots of people that do that every day, but there's a much smaller proportion of people that either do it at least once a week or less than once a week. So it's a high frequency use medium. We can then actually drill back up to where we were looking at previously by clicking on the arrow above the legend, taking us back to the aggregated view. We'll just go back into the nav bar. We can also look in some detail at the different types of social platforms used. So this can be very useful when you're looking at multi-market buys and you're looking, for example, in the Asian markets, for China, for example, where we have a large number of homegrown social networks. So we can actually change that view and look at the line chart, and that will again provide the countries side by side, so we can understand which platforms are key in which markets. Where you see a platform that is not joined by lines, that means it is unique to that market as well. On the top left as well, we also have sort of a subset of questions. So we're currently looking at which social platforms are used. We also have, within this question set, which IM platforms are used. So if we click on that, that will repivot the data to look at that question set. We also have which social or IM platforms are people's favorites. So this is key to understanding where people are most likely to be willing to be engaged with branded advertising or communications. Other things we have here are engagement online with brands. So we have some very useful stuff around attitudes towards brands. And reasons why people engage with brands. So this is looking at bridges and barriers to engaging with brands. Here we have multiple categories we can select. Because of the way the survey data has been executed, we've got a finite selection of categories we can look at here. There's still quite a few, so it will cover most requirements. So we can look at alcoholic drinks, and that will provide specific reasons why people would engage with brands online within the alcoholic drinks vertical. So we can see key motivators are just because people like the brand, all the way through to if they help you to impress others. Okay, next section we'll look at So this is media consumption. So this looks very much at the type of media people are consuming and the frequency with which they're using, and splits across devices. So we'll look at the first section on this, which is the frequency of consumption. And we'll look at the bar chart version for this. So here we have the core different media channels. These are all split, obviously, because the survey is applied to online users only. Accessing the internet is at 100%. As you can see above the legend, again, we have another drill down indicator, which means there's more granular detail available. So what I'll do is I'll just click on yes on the legend, and that will actually give us an idea of different states of frequency. So access the internet has now gone from 100%, and it's showing us different segments within that 100%. So we're looking at whether people are using it almost constantly, or if they just use it at least daily or weekly or less than weekly. And the same across all of the other sections as well. So we can also look at things like media consumption duration. Which gives us time spent on device or media channel. And then there are two more really key sections within this area of the data. So one of them is device and media usage day part. This is really great. It really gives you a really clear idea of day parts across the different devices. So both for anything from TV, tablet, radio, PC, mobile, through to magazines as well. So the key times of day where people engage most fully with content across those different channels. We can also split that into a slightly different view, which will regraph that on a line graph across the four main categories. So we're looking now at newspapers or magazines, online, radio or TV. And it's this area where you can start to see some inverse relationships between the different channels. So cases where one channel may reduce in usage, where others increase to replace that downtake. Just a key thing to point out is as you start to explore the filters and the different audience segments, you will see that these charts do change dramatically depending on the category that you're looking at and the audience segment. And at this point, I'll just point out another function of the system. So along the top, we have a navigation bar. It's within this that really has exactly the same functionality as any kind of web browser. So we have our back buttons, a forward button, and a clear button, which will actually clear selections and take us back to the beginning. We've also included additional functionality within it to be able to lock your selections in the same way that you're able to do with the filter, lock, and remove buttons down here. What we've wanted to create is ease of use. So enabling these selections at any point in the process just to create a really seamless experience for users. Other areas we have within here are also bookmarks. So if we wanted to bookmark this page that we're on currently, we'd just select that, name our bookmark, and then select whether we wanted to share that with other users, or if we wanted to include our current selections in the bookmark, and whether we wanted to enable this bookmark to apply on other selections we may make when we load this bookmark. You can then save that and share that across your organization, either as a link or within the system. We also have a sharing function within the system. So what we can do here is, to enable sharing, we can simply generate a link, and that link will then be emailed out to other users and will enable us to share the session where everyone can actually engage within the same session. You can collaboratively take over use from each other within the session and really run through insights really clearly in order to ensure that everyone has a really valid view from start to finish of your insights. Okay, the next section we'll look at in here is online activities by device and day part. This looks very much in the same way that the device and media usage looks at day parts, but it's split across different media activities in the day. So I'll just change back into bar chart for this. So here we can see all of the different activities that a user will carry out in the day, assigned into different day parts. So everything from in bed when I wake up through to in bed before I go to sleep. Just a really key point with the graphing and the data behind it, at any point during your processes in mFluence, you're able to right-click on the graph and actually export the data back into Excel. That's most of the key sections within media consumption. We'll move on to research and purchase next. So in here, we look at types of products that are purchased and how frequently. So we have two key categories here, so whether it's monthly or annually, so frequent and infrequent. We'll just look very quickly at the frequently purchased products. So within this section, we have all of the different product categories. When data goes off the chart, you're able to scroll down using the scroll bar at the side on the left-hand side next to the dimensions. And again, within this data, you can export it into Excel at any point. We also look at which types of products are researched or purchased online or offline, and the types of things that would encourage online purchase. So here we have much more qualitative responses. So we're looking at things like free delivery or getting a cheaper price or better value as being really key drivers to people purchasing with your brands online, or also driving them into research your products. And again, we have three core categories that these are spread across, so financial, groceries, and technology. Other areas within this are encouraging to online purchase and also barriers to online purchase, which is really the inverse of what we're looking at now. So it's the things that are likely to put people off purchasing with your brand. Next section we'll look at is future trends. So this looks very much at upcoming platforms and also very recent platforms which people are just starting to use. So next wave digital trends. This looks at cutting edge platforms which are just starting. So anything from connected home through to screen stacking or multi-screening, quantified self or sharing and P2P economy. Again, this has a drill down within this chart section. Where we can look at people that are planning on doing this every day. So the other element within here is, do people have interest to start using these next wave digital trends? And here we look across 4 different categories within here. So we look at whether people are currently using them, if they're just interested in them. There are also instances where people haven't answered, perhaps if they haven't actually heard of the platform or the channel, and also people who just aren't interested in those as well. Okay, the next section is the path to purchase section. I'm going to hand over to Mark Anthony for this section.
Thank you, Tim. So what we've been sneakily doing in the background is we kind of got into the session. Tim's actually invited me into as a joint user. So what it allows me to do now is take full control of work collaboratively. We can talk via it. And it gives you the ability to really start to kind of work in teams in different places. So it's great for international working. I'm going to quickly take you through just a couple of key areas before we go into the path to purchase. What you've seen Tim kind of do as you walk through is kind of build up what we've got on the left-hand side, which is effectively a whole string of different filters, different respondents. And as you go through, you might have noticed that the filtered amount changes. So out of our 55,000 base, at the moment we're only looking at, at the moment we're only looking at 696 users. So to give a bit more breadth back to what we're doing, I actually going to clear off some selections that are already made and talk about how we select those and give you more view of advanced filters. I'm just going to unlock all selections, reason being so I can now start to clear them off. What you see is how my entire right-hand side, all of my selected users disappeared in all my kind of functions. I've also used the kind of master override, so where Tim had locked filters in the within the filter area earlier, I've been able to kind of clear those now and actually be able to make changes, make selections. And Tim kindly said earlier we've empowered that to ensure when a user's using the system, you don't have to keep going backwards and forwards. So the key things are right in front of you. So if you really need to change something and start again, you can always do that. The path to purchase is one of the most complex areas of the tool. Tim also kind of stated how we kind of designed it. We've gone through the kind of initial stages of how a consumer approaches different points in the path to purchase. In the discovering phase, you really are you're not always sure that you're looking for a product. You're not always sure that you know what you need, but it gives you the ability to start looking, start discovering, and start understanding. What you're seeing at the moment is what we call an overview dashboard. This allows you the ability to kind of really see the top answers without having to delve into too much depth. I did every graph with Inside mFluence. It's fully interactive. So I can make a selection as Tim's been doing as we've been going through. And actually all of those you can see, if I click on more advertising, then actually now look at 100% of users that saw advertising and every other graph on the page would change. To go through the other stages just very quickly for you, discovering, planning and deciding are all part of the research phase. Planning is after you've discovered, start thinking about what you would like, how you would like to get it, what you might do, and really start to kind of understand more about your potential purchase. Deciding happens just before you do purchase, so it's your last mile really. So your ability if you're buying online, if you're buying in store, what can kind of change those impacts and what you're kind of still deciding to buy. Your purchase looks at claimed purchase behaviour. So your ability to start to understand what people claim they buy, how they buy it, can you change their mind during that process? What were their last considerations as they were doing that? And post-purchase being the period afterwards where people might engage with brands. It really reviews how people communicate back about their purchases and what they're willing to do to talk about their purchases or find out more information. It's also enabled online versus offline, giving you the ability to fine-tune on this page or deep dive into it. And what we go into as we go into those sections is what we call a deep dive dashboard. So overview to deep dive. It differs slightly from some of the other areas. So where we have, usually we select our products in the audience filters at the top, on the top right. There's only so much data that runs completely through these loops. What we've enabled is actually a product group selection and the product, and it works exactly the same way as it does before in the last section, both over selecting automotive. As Tim did earlier, it will only show me in the bottom right just what products are available with the automotive. So exactly the same as before, we have motorcycle, new car and second-hand car. Now if you have selected product filters before you reach this area, unfortunately those product filters will not stick. You will need to reselect them inside the meta categories. But actually every other filter or audience selection you've already made will stick. If you're looking at a smartphone user that's iPhone and does a particular activity on a certain day, that information will always say that you will really need to select your product categories coming into the path to purchase. Now, I'm looking at automotive, but I'm going to go into one of the areas now. I'm going to go into discovering and go from the overview dashboard into the deep view dashboard. What these are set up to do is to give you a more an ability to look at advanced analysis. So actually start to understand all the countries you've selected, all the different things you've selected, all the different things that can impact They all have these little magnifying glasses down at the bottom right of them, and what they do allow you to maximise and minimise the graph views. So what we have here is now an interactive dashboard that allows you to understand which devices your consumers own in this part of purchase, which devices or media they use each day, which activities they undertake on those devices, what time spent on those devices and that media yesterday, and what the breakdown of online usage is, what the frequency of usage online is, and do they like to engage with brands, research brands, do they do that online or offline? Again, all of these different permutations of interactive. So if I just kind of zoom in on one of them, I think it's the one we were on before, if I maximise that view, then we suddenly get the view of everything that's going on inside, and we effectively get our graph view that we had before further on in the tool. But actually now this audience is then pivoted to the audience that select automotive products or buy automotive products, and they only particularly use these different functions in each part of the purchase. And notice there's a cycle filter that allows me to look at discovering. Even discovering is made up of different sections, and I'll go through those just very quickly for you. So discovering is broken down to get ideas and inspiration. So this is the first section. When you look at discovering as a whole, it's an aggregated average, as most of our graph views are, until you deep dive inside them. So this breaks down into the different first of the different stages. So to get ideas and inspiration is where you really start. Where do you start? So obviously within there, the most consumers actually speak to their friends. Or they start to compare models, or they see some advertising and it starts to excite them. If I cycle back through, I'll go through and just talk to them very briefly. The next stage is to find about brands, and what you'll find is these different things start to variate. So as people are now speaking to their friends to find out about brands, they already have an idea. So actually what other things they do, they start to again go to speak to staff for the first time. Or advertising is now further down as they start to move through those functions in their path to purchase. I'll do one more. So the check product features, so again now completely changed. Speaking to friends and family has actually changed and kind of defined. Now speaking to staff becomes the key driver of that. And as you see, it's starting to decline. I can deep dive into any of these areas. So if I want to look at one specific market, I'm going to look at the UK, for instance. If I click on the UK on the graph, it will re-pivot all of that data back and change the view. And now just looking at the UK, actually the most popular thing in the UK is actually to take a test drive when you're looking at new product features. So the consumer habits change. I can also filter down into a distinct device, like I would do anywhere else in the store, and get a completely different view. So I'm looking at a mobile-only user or a mobile owner. How does their top of purchase change? What does that mean? So now just looking at mobile, it's very similar to the overall landscape, but then again, most people in the UK now own mobile, so it's not surprising in many rights. I'm going to clear a couple of those filters off, go backwards. Right, so I'm just going to go through this. At the top, what we've enabled to ensure you don't have to keep going backwards and forwards is the main button. It allows you to go back to the main overview dashboard within the past purchase. You can make more selections or change. So if you want to change your meta category or other areas, you can go to the previous section, or you can move on to the next section in the past purchase. So I'm quickly going to click on the next section and I'll go back to the overview dashboard quickly. So now moving on to the next phase of the past purchase theme planning, as you saw within our overview. You can click through all of these, we will take you through that past purchase. You'll notice some of the graphs change throughout with them, some of them stay similar. It gives you that comparable view to see how people's makeup or DNA changes on their devices and media usage by exerting different habits or different things in different phases of the past purchase. I'll show us a couple of different ones really, and looking at purchases will give you a completely different graph view than we've seen before our research phases. So in here we have a very different question. So now we're looking at what segments best describe how you felt making up your mind on your last purchase. We have things like the financial e-commerce drivers from earlier. You'll notice that every graph has the same functionalities it had before. You'll be able to access them easier or see more as you maximise them. As you're looking on that kind of initial view, it kind of gives you that top line. You can make up your own mind. It's up to you if you want to deep dive or not. You'll see some of these different activities change that we kind of showcase for you. The different media change. If I just show you very quickly, I'll click on one of those. So now we get a full graph view and all of the data that we were able to see before. We're able to skip through categories in this instance and kind of move through the same kind of features we were showcasing before earlier. And now only looking at people in that purchase phase of the past purchase. It's a very different way of looking at the data. I'm going to go into the online versus offline very quickly, which allows you the ability to look at all of the elements in the path of purchase that we just looked at. But actually now we can start to understand how their online purchase behaviour changes, the offline purchase behaviour changes per category, per actions, per different behaviours really, and also the research. You can really fine-tune into looking at just offline researchers or online researchers as we've done before. It gives you that ability really to become your own analyst and really get under the skin and create interesting things from the kind of data that's available. I'm going to come back out of here just very quickly and I'll go into the segment clustering and talk about the kind of uses and actually how you can kind of use it for media planning and other elements. The segment clustering is using that unique scoring that we saw earlier, and it breaks down your audience into 4 segments or 4 clusters. They are, let me just open it up quickly for you. So they are, they move from low social engagement to high social engagement, and low digital influence to high digital influence. And why this is important is if you start to use your audience filters, look at your audience brands, their behaviours change phenomenally within a group. So let's take females 25 to 45 that are high to low income or high to mid income. What you'll understand is actually because of the movement of these audiences changes. And as we all know as planners, you cannot just plan an entire plan to cover everyone. People exert different behaviours, they do different things. So actually, this clever system breaks down your audience selections into those 4 areas. And why I looked at high digital influence to low digital influence, it takes in people's device ownership, their device usage. A low digital influence would be a person who uses above the line channels more. So a functional might very much be around a TV user, a traditional press user still, not quite, if any of you has 1 or 2 digital devices in their life. It also might be a Facebook user, but they don't use Facebook like a leader would. A leader would use it to express their views daily, become a kind of leader of thought within the different things they love. And they're very digitally active, but a functional might just use it for a very functional basis, such as recording people's birthdays or understanding when different things are happening, like engagements, or using it as a calendar, for instance. What this does, as you do select them, it will shift and it will move to proportions. If you're planning a strategy that obviously is just TV only, or TV with press, actually maybe most of your audience is in the leader category. So what is the right strategy to talk to them? So clicking on any of the buttons on this, I'm going to click into functionals as a start. It allows you the ability to go into an overview dashboard, just like we had in the past purchase. Well, it's quickly loading up. I'll just talk a little bit more depth about it. So inside it, we examine our consumers' media footprints, our consumers' social actions, our consumers' digital and device actions, as well as their device ownership. And while this is important when you're really looking to find craft that strategy, you can really get under the skin and really start to understand what media they use, how they use it, what's the best way to communicate to them from a comms planning angle, from a content planning angle, from a strategical planning angle, or just brand activation. What are the right ways to communicate to my audience? All of these areas have, again, go into a deep dive dashboard. What I've talked about really is the media footprint. So obviously this allows you to understand what media they consume, how they use it, what they might do with it. Device usage allows you to start understanding what they do with their digital devices, or really showcases the things they own. Digital consumption, really start to understand and get into the user behavior with those digital devices, or their above the line channels. Social actions really gets into the skin of really reviewing everything about social within the tool. Now really looking at their kind of Facebook usage all the way into their kind of path to purchase. The audience, it gives you a fine ability to really look inside the audience and understand the makeup of that quad. If you selected to say 16 to 24 only, you see 16 to 24 100%. because actually now it's looking, or it will spit it back into your other segments. So it will change your selections. I'll jump in there quickly. And go into the deep dive dashboard. But in here, it gives you the ability to really start fine-tuning again, understanding. You might want to make some cool selections. It gives you your gender, your age, your income levels, devices they own, and it gives you another ability to start fine-tuning again. So maybe you just want to look at females that use online purchase, and it will re-pivot all of the data back in that segment. I'm going to come out there again using the maximize buttons allows you the ability to see the graph in full. What you'll find as you do go through them, you won't be able to see 100% obviously in the smaller views. We've actually hidden some extra features in some of them, and I'll show you those now. So if I go into social actions, and I'll showcase some of the kind of more hidden, where we know there was a lot of interesting in the data and things that people would really want to use and look at the segments, we've enabled that. If I go into an area such as to gain information about brands or things I would engage with brands online, all of these maximize views most often not open up multiple graphs inside them. Unfortunately, the one I've just chosen doesn't, but I'll show you another one. So in this one, it looks at all different attitudinal behaviours that people narrate in the scoring system from 1 to 7. What we do is we've enabled all of them in there. So you can actually start to look at, do people always trust brands on social networks? Do they like expressing their own opinions? Do they not like expressing their own opinions? If you select any of those, you can start really seeing how that affects their engagement with online brands. And it gives you the ability to really start fine-tuning, understanding. You can multi-select at any given time. You can see the select by just clicking on an item. If you hold Command on a Mac or Control on the PC, you can do disparate selections. So I could select 1, 3, and 5 as my filters. And that will re-pivot just to look at those areas and the things that people buy. And it's probably not the most exciting use of that feature. But it really starts to give you the ability just to look at very minute things and things that you really want to discover to get a depth out of the data. What I also just kind of talk about, as we look at the top of the area where that's loading up, what we have is kind of in pings, basically. We have functionals, observers, leaders, and connectors. Anything in ping that's used in the system means you selected it. So what you're viewing, and we've enabled the ability to walk through segment to segment to segment in this case, or using the next and previous button to go through the media, to the device, to the digital usage, to the social. I think my disparate selections might have slightly crashed. Bear with me. Right. So it's actually only allowed me to select 5, and I've rebooted there just to stop it so we can move on. But what we have now is 100% of users. Well, we're looking at 100% of users against every other graph of just that area that's rated it in 5. Might be a case I took 4 to 7, much easier. I actually look at people that really trust brands from other sources and don't always trust them on social networks. So it gives you the ability to really get under that skin. I'm just going to clear those filters. I'm just going to quickly go through just one more slight part of it, just so you can see some of the more depth and kind of get under the skin. I'll look at media footprint. So in here, the first graph we have on the left, really looking at time spent on different devices and media for each of the individual countries. Again, I've got a graph already left open from last time, so you'll find many of the steps that you use as you go through, always save. Now looking at things like media consumption frequency, as we saw earlier. We can exactly the same views as we had before. We can look at the frequency, we can look at the yes, the no. We can also start to select countries, different devices, and see how that behavior really starts to change. As we go through it also, what I do is I'll click on observers, and actually everything shifts. Now we're looking from functionals and moving to our observers section. So observers have a high social engagement but a low digital, a high social engagement, that's right, yes, and a low digital frequency. So actually they're different kinds of users. They're very social. They don't tend to use a lot of digital. If you want to communicate to that section, that's where all of your audience resides, in your audience selections. How does that change on the different devices or mediums you can talk to them? Are they now more predominantly a TV user? Are they more predominantly a newspaper or press reader? Do their frequencies of usage change? You'll notice actually they're much less digitally savvy. So actually we're seeing a lot of time disappear away from our daily users. And Argentina seems to be the exception out of the cohort here. But actually now selecting, let's say, leaders. Again, that will change completely. You'll notice that there's a lot going on in the background of some of these bigger sections. Effectively what they are, they're almost an application inside an application. So they're having to crunch gazillions of lines of data as they re-permutate things, look at all the scoring algorithms. You'll find sometimes within the kind of segment purchase, segment clustering or the path purchase, you'll find they might just be a tiny bit slower than some of the parts in the system. And what you see here as I've gone to leaders, if we're now, you'll see that actually the digital usage has increased. The daily media usage has increased. Where we're averaging almost at 5 in our observer category, now in leaders, we're coming very close to 10. I'm going to go back to the main and I'll kind of just talk about some of the last little parts and I'll move on to the country profiles. So you'll also see at the bottom that this always indicates in the bottom right what segment you're now in. You'll notice everything's also changed as you've gone through the segments. At any point you can add, as we said before, you can add these filters and graphs to people that have internet at home or Wi-Fi internet at home. And then actually we can add more filters back in our audience overload. I'm not going to do that now. What I'll do is I'll come out of this very quickly and I'll go into the country profile and I'll pass you back to Tim.
Okay, thank you, Mark Anthony. Okay, so we'll just wait for those filters to load out. Okay, so I'm very quickly going to walk you through the country profiles. As I mentioned before, these are the very top-down views on all of the individual markets within the data, giving you a very quick overview of their cultural and social makeup and also economic makeups as well per market. So the first screen that we see in the country profile selection is just select your country. So what we'll do in this case is we'll have a quick look at the UK. That will take us through to the immediate first page for it, which will be population. So this is looking at the makeup of the population, gender splits. Okay, so here we are. So as I said before, this data is made up from a number of different sources. So we use the WHO and the World Bank as well as the US Department of Commerce global surveys. Population page looks at urban versus rural population, the different age groups and the different gender splits, and also the number of seats in national parliament and age dependencies and population growth. Culture. This looks very much at specifics for culture within each market and any particular standout points, looking at language and society, the character of the culture. So within England, obviously, it looks at class system and also the unfortunate stiff upper lip. We then look at economy, where we can see GDP, various different indicators for economic growth and sustain. Look at inflation, level of imports. Employment looks at very much the same types of data, so employment growth, number of employed, number of unemployed, how many are long-term, how many are part-time, and the splits as well between genders within employment. Other areas are education and transport,
We also have digital media and also weather as well, which I'll just touch on very quickly. And health is one of the final areas too. Weather just shows static averages for weather over the period of a year, looking at both temperature and precipitation. Okay, so that draws to an end the run-through of the system. Outside of that, we actually have a number of different materials for you guys to get to know the system in much more detail. We didn't want to run through it all on a call because it would have taken more than 1 hour. One of the key points is some of the YouTube videos that we've actually developed specifically for JWT. What these are basically step-by-step light touch videos. There are 14 of them. We highly, highly recommend that everybody that's using the system watches all of these videos and takes notes as you go through. They cover all of the fundamentals that we've gone over just now, but also gives you some real insight into some of the more advanced features and advanced manipulation methods that you can do within the system. As you'll probably have seen, the system is fairly simple. If you want it to be simple, it also becomes quite a complex and advanced system as well if you have the need to go into that level of detail. So there are 14 videos there. Please do watch them all. In terms of support, if you, at the first instance, just email any questions through to Karen Montecuole, and she will be able to feed back into us if she needs to escalate, and also your TNS contacts per market are also your main points of contact for support as well. Okay, thanks everyone for watching the video and listening to the call. If you, like I said, if you have any questions, get in touch with Karen, and thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.